and we are sitting with Hanifa Neo Washington. She is a part of the Fireside Project as well as One Village Healing. I'm so excited to have you here, Hanifa. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem. I was really looking forward to this conversation just because I feel like your focus is so aligned with where I see a lot of important information and ideas kind of centered in the space that maybe don't get enough spotlight in comparison to some of the medical research and things along those lines, but this is such an essential piece to the puzzle, you know?
Absolutely.
So I appreciate you kind of bringing this to the forefront, being kind of a face for that movement in a way. How have things been going for you in the psychedelic space lately?
Yeah, it's been so interesting kind of emerging into the psychedelic space, really kind of above ground about a year and a half ago or so. And so, with Fireside Project, we launched the first national psychedelic peer support line in April of 2021. We have literally this past month reached our 1,000 person mark, so we've served over 1,000 people. And so what we're about is risk reduction. We're also about education. And so we really believe that nobody should be alone during or after a psychedelic experience. Everybody should have this sort of baseline support. We see ourselves as a safety net. So how we work is it's free, it's confidential, anybody can call or text. We also have an app that people can use. So we're really trying to make it as accessible as possible to be reducing risk, to be supported, to have education and understanding about what's happening during your experience and how to integrate that so that we're reducing risk and increasing the potential of your psychedelic experience at the same time. We feel that this is sort of this baseline platform that we're building everything else around. And so we really believe about culturally attuned psychedelic support. We also focus on educating people as well. And then all of this is wrapped up in understanding the data and the research of what's coming through and what we're getting to understand, and then sharing it back out with the larger community. And everything that we do is done through a lens and a perspective of equity and liberation. So we're moving closer and closer and closer to that. And that's been really central to all the work that I've done really in my life, like how I align with the work that I do. In 2019, I co-founded One Village Healing, which is now, because of COVID, an online experience. Before it was in person, but actually online has helped us reach more people. And so we are a BIPOC-led, BIPOC-centered healing, wellness, and mindfulness project. And so it's a space that's safe. Folks can come. It's also free, so every day there's something that someone can drop into. We also see it as like an integrative space, and so when we talk about psychedelic experiences, it's not just like being with the medicine, but it's also what happens after that. Like, what's the learning that comes through? What do you need to process? And often it's so important to have community to do that well. And so One Village Healing, that's a part of our focus as well. And so in this space, I feel that, as you were saying, risk reduction, harm reduction, and education feel like garnishes to this space. And we're really here to say, no, we're a whole meal,
Right.
And without risk reduction, without harm reduction practices, this industry is actually putting itself at risk.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. And I think that it's an essential piece of this puzzle that requires kind of more care, more community care. And I think that you guys are doing that brilliantly with both of those projects. I'd kind of like to maybe start a little bit with Fireside Project and kind of get to know how that project came to be. How did you become a part of that? What was the thought process there? And how have the logistics, I guess, have been on its way to its inception?
Sure, yeah. So the founder of Fireside Project is Joshua White. I'm a co-founder, and so we actually met in 2019 at Burning Man in the desert, and so had a wonderful connection.
Classic.
I know, totally classic. It's just like literally, holding space for him for some time, and us getting, just like riding our bikes through the playa. And then a year later, we reconnected around this concept of Fireside Project. So very early on, Josh had this idea. Like, he worked for a support line for many years in San Francisco, and we were just at this point of like, how do we bring in equity and liberation and support? And so really combined our passions around that and started to move forward with a concept that became Fireside Project. And when we're thinking of the name Fireside Project, we were like, what is the feeling we want people to have when they call for support, when they step into any of our programs, when they think of Fireside Project? And so we're thinking about a place where everybody's welcome, a place that's cozy and safe.
Yes.
Right, and so that's where the name kind of came from. And so we really have been on a full sprint, so last June, June of 2020. So this is in the thick of the pandemic, in the thick of the movement that had been sparked from George Floyd's murder. We're in the midst of one of the largest mental health pandemics, or if you want to call it that, right now. So there was just a lot kind of happening, and I think, I think somebody probably will write a book someday about like all the things that emerged from the pandemic, because there was just a very special synergy that happened with that, and all of this we were doing virtually. So since last June, we've been making a full sprint to gather our advisory board, come up with our plan, deciding like creating our mission, all of that, and we launched the line in April of this year, but we really formed as an organization or a project in November of 2020. And we are a fiscally sponsored project, and we are on our way to applying for our own 501 actually next month.
That's great.
So yeah, so those are some of a little bit of the logistics and pieces of what we've been up to. And we started only operating 5 days a week. And literally just 2 weeks ago, we are now 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. So we have brought on about 70 volunteers.
Wow.
Over this past 7-8 months to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's excellent. It definitely takes a village, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It makes sense. I'm so curious to know, because my understanding is that Fireside Project is used as a resource for the individual kind of in that psychedelic state. Maybe they need somebody to talk to and they're feeling a little bit uncomfortable. They need that kind of support. But are you finding that there's a lot of people that are calling in maybe after their psychedelic experiences as well?
Yeah, so we are the Psychedelic Peer Support Line. So we're run by peers, volunteers. And so these are people who have maybe had their own experiences, who get the importance of having that peer support during and after an experience. And so we actually have about 60% of our calls are people calling after they've had an experience.
Oh wow!
And so we are here for that. So some people are calling immediately after an experience. Some people are calling 6 years after an experience,
right?
Because they still need that unpacking and support. So integration is like super important to us. About 30% of our calls are people who are actively tripping, and then we have a very small percentage of like prank calls and people who are just like looking for information, or people who are calling for things that are outside of our scope. And one of the things that are outside of our scope is pre-trip. So we do not support people or guide them pre-trip. So if they're calling to be like, should I do this amount of mushrooms, or should I take this and this, or where should I go trip? We don't provide that information because it's illegal. So we have to make sure that we're staying within the parameters of our protocols.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And in terms of it being kind of an accessible platform, I think that's so essential here, right? Because the integration tools, the therapy sessions, they're so expensive at the moment. They're not being insured. There's really no infrastructure there yet. So the fact that this is available for people who are maybe new to this world or experience or what it is kind of critical, I think.
Absolutely.
In going in the right direction. So if we're talking about accessibility, maybe we can talk about your other project, right? The One Village Healing.
Yeah.
So can you let me know a little bit more about that? What exactly are you guys doing in terms of supporting BIPOC communities?
Sure, I'd love to jump into that, but I just wanted to mention the Fireside Project app.
Oh yes, please.
So the app we launched maybe 2 months ago, and it really helped us sort of increase our call volume after that. Because the app, it's like we all have our phones. They're so important. Like they're like a part of our family. And so when you see the logo, the Fireside logo, it's just easier to access, especially if you're in a psychedelic state. And the app was designed literally to support the ease of use. if you are, in an altered state. So there's basically two big buttons, one that says text, one that says call.
Not a bad idea.
And yeah, it's been really helpful. And we also see the app is going to really help us with our educational platforms and our outreach. So as we're developing the new versions of it, that will be happening. And it's so important when we talk about access to ensure that that's a free app and everybody can have access to it. And also, you can just call 62 Fireside if you don't have an app or you have a rotary phone or something as well. But I think
the
that
burner phones.
yeah. But for us, it's just we're like, how can we make this simple? How can we make it easy and accessible for all people? And so, speaking about easy and accessible for all people, I'd love to share
Yes.
a little bit about One Village Healing.
Of course.
And so, I've been a part of in my own wellness journey for many years now, and again, integration spaces are so important, have been so important for me in my own psychedelic wellness journey, which has been going on for 7-10 years now at this point. And when I am going to yoga studios or going to meditations or doing breath work, often I would find I would be the one or one of few people of color
Right.
In a space, one of few kind of large bodied people in a space. And those things do matter.
Yes.
We can pretend that they don't, but they really do matter in terms of how am I going to feel comfortable, or how can I feel more comfortable? How can I have a space or be in a space where I'm going to want to open up and talk? And so being able to provide such a spaces was one of the things that inspired me to create One Village Healing. And so One Village Healing is this activated online wellness space that's BIPOC centered, but we're also focused and offer sessions and classes for all people. But you can come to One Village Healing and know that you can find an affinity space that's for people of color. If you just want to go to a yoga class for Black women, that's there. There's a Black men's healing group as well, where they do talk. They talk things out, then they're doing Qigong and working together. There's Reiki sessions, education, breath work, and beginning to really create this echelon of psychedelic wellness offerings as well. A lot around education. There's a lot of re-education that needs to be done based on the war on drugs, right? So there's a lot of stigma and fear about psychedelics within particularly the Black and brown communities. And so what's amazing, what's been really great, is that through creating One Village Healing, we've had all these wonderful people come to our sessions and classes, and now it allows us to have a community that trusts us, and we're holding these information sessions on, undoing the harm of the war on drugs. So let's get into what psychedelics really are. Mm-hmm. And people are showing up and have questions and are curious and are wanting to now go seek therapy and wanting to go have their own psychedelic experiences. And so I think we have to create spaces where folks of color in particular feel safe and protected and can ask all the questions they need to, and then have a place to return to drop into integration work, to drop into the journaling, to drop into the group conversation. Because without that, we're really sort of risking losing the potential of the psychedelic experience, because sometimes people don't have the place to return to, or the family or the group of friends. And so we want to make sure there's that place for everybody.
That's so great, and I think that makes a lot of sense, because I think a lot of Black and brown communities are very collectivist in a way. It's very kind of family oriented and making sure that we do feel safe with one another.
Yeah.
So I think it's excellent that you're able to do that. I would love to understand what kind of actions we can take to help destigmatize the use of psychedelics in these communities, because of course I come from them as well, and I find that it's very difficult for me to disclose my own use of psychedelics, with my own family and my communities. So how do you think we can move forward to make this a little bit easier and more accessible for those communities?
Sure. I think that education is just the first thing. And so one of the pieces that Fireside Project is up to in early 2022, we're beginning to develop our public education, our first round of public education offerings. And so those offerings are going to be about psychedelic citizenship. So that's about like kind of understanding, what psychedelics are. So it's basically taking our 4-day training that we have for our volunteers and distilling it into a 2-day training, sort of like the essentials, and then offering that training up to the community at large. And so that's going to be for people for anybody, people who are active psychedelic, advocates, users, family members, people who know nothing about psychedelics whatsoever. And we see it as also risk reduction and harm reduction, because what happens is that just as you would take CPR, right, because it can save a life, going through this psychedelic citizenship training helps people understand what's happening with someone when they're in a psychedelic state, what some of the basics of psychedelic chemistry are, how to approach and talk with somebody before and after, and also like what are the myths and what's actually true, right? And so we see this as a beginning, and then there's a whole section on what is the war on drugs, how did it impact us as individuals, what were the untruths that we ingested, and then what is it we can do now to change our relationship with drugs.
Right.
And we see that as the beginning. And so without that beginning, getting into the other parts it would take a quantum jump to get there. So we see this sort of like 101 is like one option or one tool to begin to undo those harms and unpack those untruths. And then it's about creating, I feel it's about creating spaces for people to have very like simple, if you will say that, or safe experiences like with altered states. And you can do that without ingesting things. You can do it through breath work,
right,
for example. And so allowing people to like have safe experiences, that they can move at their own pace. And I just so believe in having that integration space afterwards to be like, this is what came up for me. Did this happen to you? Is this normal? And so something else we're doing, which I'm very excited about, is that One Village Healing, Fireside Project, and the Ancestor Project, we have come together to basically co-host an integration circle for BIPOC folks. And so that's folks who are, psychedelic curious, people who have had experiences, and so it's a safe space facilitated by our facilitators where people can come and like integrate, ask questions, and so without, the white gaze, you know what I'm saying, and not having that safe space. And so I think those are really the beginning places, and I'm sure there's a lot more ideas, but without giving space for curiosity and some kind of basic re-education, you can't really move forward, I think.
Totally. I think that's fantastic. You guys are taking such a great approach towards this, and even having representation in the industry is so critical as well. That's why I'm just so excited about what you're doing, and really kind of like channeling this all forward. Ancestor Project is doing a great job of doing that as well. I think it is essential for us to be able to have more diverse groups in the space. I think that is severely lacking in many ways, and it's not necessarily priority for a lot of people or on their radar in the way that I believe that it needs to be moving into 2022 and beyond. And we want this psychedelic medicine and psychedelic healing to scale in a way that works for all types of communities and is an inclusive space. We don't want to be confined to the capitalistic kind of structure that we've been dealing with for so long. We have the ability to create our own world in this way, and we're all very open-minded. So I think that we can make that work if we just prioritize that, Yeah. Oh, it's so exciting.
I also think that it's really important for people to understand the necessity for affinity spaces and the necessity for collective spaces. So they feed each other. And when we sort of negate or don't create or appreciate and respect and protect affinity spaces where like groups can communicate and be together, we're doing a disservice to the collective.
Yes.
And so one of the things we're also looking at in 2022 as a part of our equity initiative for Fireside Project is launching what we're calling our affinity volunteers. And so these folks will be, so on the line now, you go through a 4-day training, you get locked into a one day a week shift, so it's like a 4-hour shift on the support line, and it's every week it's the same shift, and you commit to a year. So our volunteers, that's their service to us. And we know that that comes with barriers, right? So not everybody has the luxury every week to give 4 hours at the same time. And so even within our current volunteers, just like the representation of different identities across all spectrums is not where like we really want it to be. But also we know we're coming to this as our first year, and we're not going to undo the patriarchy and white supremacy like in 7 months, which we could.
Unfortunately, yeah.
But so one of the first kind of steps that we're taking, is creating these affinity cohorts of volunteers, where we're going to, the first round will be Black folks, Indigenous folks, veterans, and trans people. And so we're going to train them. They'll do the 4-day training, and then they'll be on call. And so for anybody who's calling the line, who wants to speak to someone who shares one of those identities, and we all know that we have a multiplicity of identities, like we're not pretending that we're all a monolith, but it's a step to say, this is an integration call, I'd like to speak to a military veteran, or I'd like to speak to a Black person, I'd like to speak to an Indigenous person, I'd like to speak to a trans person. They'll have that opportunity. And so over time, we'll begin to build the number of affinity cohort members across various types of identities. And then, when we're talking about like 5-10 years from now, we'll have this like hundreds of thousands of volunteers, who from all types of identities,
yes,
that folks will be able to integrate with, and in time potentially also, be able to call when they potentially might be tripping as well. And we just understand that choice matters, and giving choice to the client or to the person calling in, the person seeking support, should be how care it originates.
Yeah.
And I think that I would love for more people and institutions, organizations in the psychedelic space and the care space to take that approach.
That's so excellent. I think that's also something that's lacking, not even in just the psychedelic mental health space, but in the mental health space in general. The vast majority of therapists and mental health practitioners are Caucasian, so it's difficult. It's difficult to be able to have that really intimate relationship and kind of background understanding, cultural understanding of those individual struggles. It's kind of that one thing I think that's missing in developing that trust, and that's so essential for that therapy relationship, right?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the other things about the initiative, the equity initiative, is that so we've hired this cohort of affinity volunteers who are coming from these various backgrounds. We also have volunteers who come from those backgrounds who are already a part of our core volunteer team, and we want to take it a step further. So we're creating an equity fund to offer to about 20 people a year who come from any of the volunteers who have served for a year, who come from marginalized communities or communities that have been traditionally excluded, to have access to these funds to further their education within the psychedelic field.
Wow.
So whatever that they want to do, if it's a particular training, an institution they want to go to, and even further yet, we're working with institutions like Naropa, for example, to say, hey, can you lower your tuition so that when our Fireside Fellows come to you to further their education, we're making it even easier for them to get the resource. And then we're also requiring that the institutions who we partner with are also dedicated to doing their own inner work. So they have to sign the North Star Pledge. They also have to show us what organizational programs are they using, what other consultant groups they're working with, what processes they're going through with their staff and faculty to be undoing systems of harm within their organization. Because what we don't want to do is take this amazing Fireside Fellow who's done like 200 hours of training on the line to go into an institution and then particularly maybe receive harm. And we know that it's not like the end-all be-all, but we know that at least these institutions are saying that they're making a commitment to doing their own internal work. And so what we see this is like this pipeline. So we're creating a pipeline, so we are inspiring people of color, people who are coming from other marginalized communities to have resource to continue their psychedelic education and training so that they can go on to be the researchers, they can go on to be the teachers, they can go on to be the doctors within the psychedelic space, so that we over a generation will be increasing, the diversity within the psychedelic space.
That's so excellent. I love how you're kind of projecting this in like a long-term way, and you're really holding the hands of people who might not know where to start,
Right.
how to begin through that journey, and society doesn't necessarily make it that easy for us either, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Are there any plans of you kind of bringing the work from Fireside into a more real-life, brick-and-mortar, physical context?
No.
No?
I think it's so interesting, forming during the pandemic. We are from all over, so there are, staff in Vermont. We have a founder in like Denmark. There's another founder in California. I'm in Connecticut. Our volunteers are from all over the country and the world, really. We have people in Germany and Poland and Australia and Canada, so we're really kind of all over. I think if we did anything like that, it would be like maybe like a one-week institution where we'd have like our own sort of conference or experience where we would, have education and training and speakers and things like that. But I don't think we're anywhere desiring to like have a brick and mortar place. Not at this time.
That's interesting. I mean, there's so much time, I guess. There's so much possibility, and with the internet now and how things are going, it's just you're able to reach so many more people, right? So it's excellent. It's kind of like a worldwide project now. So that's great.
Definitely. Yeah, our goal is to be global, so to be in different countries and to be 24/7. Right now, we're taking baby steps, getting there. Yeah.
That's so exciting. Well, I don't want to take up more of your time, Hanifa. I feel like we've gone over some really excellent stuff, and I would love to talk to you all day about this. It's just so critical.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I guess if we could end this off, what are you really hoping for the future of this movement? What's the idealistic kind of utopic idea that you have?
The utopic idea?
Yes.
Ooh, I love that. I love the utopia. I mean, at the core of all of this is like people being free, people being healed, right? So that's what we're all up to. We're trying to heal our wounds and be free to live our lives and do the things that we're most excited about. And so I dream of a world and a society where access to both psychedelic therapy in general, psychedelic wellness in the way that it makes sense for individuals. So for an individual to come to a sort of like wellness center or place, and that those places are accessible, that they're plenteous, as easy as we can find a Starbucks or a liquor store. I love us to be able to have these sort of wellness hubs where you can go and you can say, you know what, today I need meditation. I would like to work with, someone to do like Reiki and breathwork. I would like to do psychedelic therapy. I want to sign up for a psychedelic retreat. So I dream of a world and see a world where care and wellness are there's no barriers to them. And with that means on the other side that the doctors and the insurance companies and the state and the government and the different practitioners also want that as well, and makes time and space to collaborate in ways that center the person who needs the healing. And I think that's possible. I think that it's possible to prototype something like that, and it's already happening, but not in ways that are replicable or in ways that people are ready to accept. So I want to hold that vision of the person seeking healing being central, that there are places that are easily accessible for folks to access this, and in the ways that they want to. Right, because not everybody's going to want to do MDMA. Psychedelics aren't also for everyone. So, what combinations can people put together for their own wellness journey? Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's a world that I want to live in as well. That's
awesome.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us today, Hanifa. It was really awesome to chat a little bit
Thank
about
you,
what's
Swati.
going on.
This is amazing.
You're welcome.
Yeah.